Welcome to the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast, your guide to understanding how to get out of the Wall Street rat race and start your own mailbox money lifestyle. Now, don't let these handsome Southern draws fool you. These financial minds are teaching our country to enhance savings, increase cash flow, and create passive income, all without the help of Wall Street. Are you ready to break through? Now here are your hosts, Russ Morgan and Joey Murray.
If you've been listening to our podcast, you're like, man, I love what you guys are talking about. I want to build passive income through one of these 5 pillars that you're talking about, but how do I do it? Stallion, tell them. It is so easy.
It's so easy that we created the longest URL possible, so you may want to write this down. freecall.wealthwithoutwallstreet.com. Go to freecall.wealthwithoutwallstreet.com and you can set up your call with one of us. We're excited to talk to you. Welcome to the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. This is your host, Joey the Italian Stallion Murray, joined as always by Russ the Idea Guy Morgan. Russ, we have a freaking ton to cover today. Are you kidding?
Yeah, this is going to be big because we kind of just scratched the surface last week and we addressed something that most of us really don't want to uncover. This is the stuff that we want to keep in the closet, and that's our spending. Right? We don't like to talk about spending. Last week's episode, we really started digging into it because we were inspired by this FIRE movement. And I want to make sure that we touch on those, both positives, but also there's some I got some concern with the maybe the guidance, if you will, that's leading this movement.
Right. There's a lot of advice, if you will, being just spewed across the internet, and it seems like it's just regurgitated. That from what you and I have kind of researched so far, there's one person that said this, so now all of a sudden this blogger, all of them start pointing to that, and I don't think there's as much questioning of that. It's just kind of accepted, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we've said. There's flaws in that in any sort of financial environment.
Well, we're the contrarians to the group. So shocker alert that we're going to come out and we're going to try to point some holes in this thing, because that's really what we do. Everything that we do personally, trust me, we have been poking at trying to figure out a way that it can break. So when we hear about a movement that's sweeping across the nation, that's got everybody fired up, I'm going to start poking at it. And when I was at FinCon a couple weeks ago, I was poking at this thing and I started learning maybe where some of these little, there's a couple of Dutch boys out there with the finger in the dam. And I'm telling you, as much as I am excited about what they're trying to do, and if you're listening to this episode and you didn't listen to the previous one, let's tell them, Joey, what is FIRE? What are we talking about?
Okay, we're talking about the acronym Financial Independence, Retire Early. And at the end of the day, this is a group that is just ruthless about saving money. So we're all for that, right? They're questioning their spending. They're managing their budget, which admittedly you and I have a lot to work on in that. We're reading Profit First right now and trying to get those things in line. But the movement is all about how to say no to corporate America. There's a lot of people that feel stuck in that. They want out. They want independence, right? Those are things that we can applaud. And those of us that are business owners, we want the ability to step away from our business at some point, make it passive. So we're right in line with that.
Yeah, no, I think this is very good because there are people that are listening to this that are in a job that they don't like and they're trying to find a way, and maybe they resonate with what's happening in this FIRE movement. They say, yeah, sure. Let me stop spending money in areas that I don't want to so that I can get freedom from this job that I have. But also, there's some of us who are entrepreneurs who follow the E-Myth, right? I mean, if you haven't read E-Myth by Michael Gerber, go do it. But I mean, it's a classic example of being great in a technician and then starting a business and creating a job for yourself and ultimately start hating that because now it's required to you to do the job in order to pay all the bills. So you start hating the love that you have. And so I get the independence, the want to be free. And as we talked about last time, we need to start living in the moment and not just existing in the moment. But the FIRE movement has kind of has some very specific things that they follow.
That's
as I've read through this.
Right. And I think we could point to those as potential pitfalls, right? There's even almost a sense of calling them like an unknown that may be around the corner that they haven't considered.
All right. So let's dig into some of those things. What are some of these like common themes that you're hearing in this FIRE movement group that's saying, okay, here's what we're doing. And then Joey, let's figure out, is that foolproof, or is there some areas that really they need to be looking at maybe from a different light?
Yeah. So one of the main things is that they are really trying to keep expenses super low. They're trying to mitigate those debts, pay them off completely, so on and so forth.
Well, when you say keeping expenses low, I met a girl who has 5 kids and they're living off $1,800 a month. That's low.
That's extremely low. But when you build your financial independence around a model that's based off of those kind of costs, we all know that costs are on the rise. Inflation is eating us alive. Taxes are going to continue to, we've kind of touched on that in previous episodes, and we're going to have another one coming up soon on a deadline that's coming very soon concerning taxes. But building your budget for financial independence off of that low of a fixed cost, not leaving room for those things to rise, I think there's going to be some big surprises there.
Well, here's the issue is that I love cutting unnecessary expenses and getting lean and mean, right? There's beauty in that, right? There's just not a whole lot of like overconsumption. We can start thinking of others when we're not just consuming everything for ourselves. I'm not going to live in a tiny house, but those who are all for that, great. Knock yourself out. Here's the problem, though, and this exists for everyone. It exists for the person who's in FIRE, and it exists for the 80-year-old who's living on Social Security. And that's when you get to that tight and you're living on truly a fixed income. You can't afford for things to go up because it really then, your tiny house gets like shoebox size. I mean, that's really what we're talking about.
That's right. Yeah. I think that's a big one. The second thing I think is, and we mentioned this before, but they're largely saving in the process of seeking out financial dependence. They're saving in market-based accounts.
All right. I want to press pause there because I don't think we hit that. I don't think we really explained expenses enough. And I don't want, this is a thing that you and I want to make sure we don't miss something, because whoever's listening to this right now, if you're listening to this and you're part of this movement, you're like, yeah, but I'm going to save money. I hear you on things are going to go up, but Joey, why are they going to go? Why does this person need to understand that taxes and inflation all are connected? And here's the thing. You're shaking your head like, Russ, I don't know. Like, you tell them. Like, you're the one with the idea. Why don't you bring it up?
The idea guy, for crying out loud.
Okay, thank you for asking, Joey. I'll tell them. So here's the thing. Taxes and inflation are the same exact thing. People don't realize that whenever a business owner is taxed at a higher rate, which, yes, in 2026, tax rates are going to revert back to what they were prior to this new tax law.
You went ahead and did the spoiler alert.
It's fine. Trust me, we got plenty of stuff to share on the tax stuff coming down the road. But just so you know, taxes are going back, and then they're going to start going up, 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 up. There's no way it can't. When you start looking at the unfunded liabilities of our country, we are in a disaster area. And I'm not trying to be doomsday guy. I'm just telling you like fact.
Dumpster fire.
Unfortunately.
Okay.
So here's the issue. I'm a business owner. I'm selling my product. I have a profit margin. I'm living off $100,000, right? Now, taxes go up and I have to pay 25% more than I was. Can I live off $75,000 instead of $100,000?
No.
There's not a chance. So what am I going to do?
You're going to raise the price of your goods.
I'm going to raise the price of my goods. Now, clearly, if every other person doesn't, I'll go out of business, but all business owners are going to operate in the same thing. So even though they're not operating in unison, unless they find some innovative way to avoid the tax, but as a general rule, we're going to rise. As tax rates rise, so will prices.
So that's a good point. So if you're listening to this and you said, "Oh man, I'm already building this financial independence, and I'm not nowhere near that top tax bracket. I don't have to worry about it." Wrong. Right? that's going to affect how you built your budget, because all the prices of the goods around you that you need to live on are going to go up.
Yeah,
Great point.
The things that you are buying are going to cost more. You're in your tiny house. I'm sure you're using water. I'm sure you're using electricity. By the way, all those public utilities, yeah, they're just going to go up. I mean, the marginal rate of those things are going to just follow what the costs are. So those are public utility companies that when they're taxed by the government, they just raise their price. They work on cost plus. They're just going to raise their price. It's exactly what's going to happen with groceries, with gasoline, you name it. So when you're on a fixed budget, you really do not have any margin for error in that.
That's a great point.
That's a huge problem for people who are having to work. Now, if you're living off $1,800 a month and you've got $50 million sitting out there and you've got income coming into you from all these rental properties and other businesses as you own, that's bringing in $50,000 a month. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Good for you.
Good for you that you're living on $1,800 a month. But if you're living off $1,800 a month because you got a little small nest egg and you're trying to work off this, what we're about to go to, this 4% rule.
Yeah.
And you're just saying, well, based upon that, I'm going to be able to take it off for the rest of my life. Nah. There is huge problems. And that's what I'm hearing within this movement is that they're not like creating tons and tons of assets. They're literally creating just enough so that they can quit the job and start living off this 4% rule. And I see the expenses going up on that fixed budget, crushing them. Now,
now some people are hearing you say 4% rule, 4% rule.
Okay,
what
so that's number two. That's the second problem. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna move on to that. 4% rule. So there was a study done back in the late 90s. It's called the Trinity Study. It was done by three professors that basically went in to try to dispel this idea that you could take out 6-7% out of your stock market based accounts in retirement. Because, there's been a lot of like, oh, well, if the market goes up at 8 to 10 or 12, Dave Ramsey returns, then sure, I can take out 6, 7, 8% and have no big issue and keep up with inflation.
Right.
So this study was basically done to look back at all different types of cycles. Like I got 75% of my money in the stock market, 25 in bonds. I got 50% of my money in the stock market, 50% in bonds, so forth and so on. And they went through all these different market cycles. And the objective was to see at what point did they break? At what percentage rate? So if I had $1 million in my account, what percentage of that could I take out every single year? And at the end of 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, still have at least $1, right? So here's the key. I want to start off with this because this is a problem that the financial world has created, has passed along to you, and you've bought it wholesale. And that is that you should accept some level of failure.
Yeah, some sort of a risk factor of, well, I might run out of money.
This is not a thing. So, Joey, if your family, you guys just traveled to New York, right?
That's
you
right.
guys are in the Big Apple.
Yes, ate our way through the Big Apple for sure.
I could tell.
I'm trying to lose weight right now.
So, when you guys were boarding the plane to head to New York, the pilot said, by the way, we have a 95% chance we'll land this plane safely. Would you have boarded?
I'm not feeling real good about it. But I will say this. You get into a plane, it's not guaranteed.
It's not guaranteed. But if he said you have a 95% chance that we're going to make it, what are you doing?
I'm probably going to step off of that thing.
If he says you got a 50% chance you're going to make it, what you going to do?
There's not a chance I'm getting on that thing.
There's not a chance. Now, is there a 99.9999999% chance that plane could that we'll get there safely, and then that point and all the zeros and then a 1 at the end? Yes.
Yeah, you accept that. You accept that.
Yeah. Right? But that's not what most people are following in their plan. They're literally accepting a 5%, 10%, 20% risk factor in the way that they're planning for retirement.
Now, some of you are listening and thinking, okay, I'm not really following all this. We're going to put that actual chart in the show notes so you can get access to it and see what we're talking about. But so go to the show notes and make sure and click on that Ibbotson chart. And we're going to make sure that you have that so you can see what we're talking about. But to have a 20%, let's just mention this, 35 years is the longest that this thing even went. And some of these folks are talking about retiring in their young 30s, or some of them even earlier than that. So you're talking about 70 years they're trying to quote unquote retire early and quote unquote have that money last that they've been creating a nest egg for. It's not even close to 4%.
No. So Wade Fowle, another economist, came out, and this is about 10 years after that. He and another economist basically went back and redid the study, right? Redid the original study, and he's looked upon by many. He's on Bloomberg, he's on NBC News. I mean, Wall Street Journal. I mean, he contributes to a lot of things. Everybody looks to him as the expert. So
a retirement income expert.
Right. He took like 50,000 iterations and ran this thing back and forth. And what his point was is, don't look at this 4% rule and assume that's that's the bottom. Like, you can go 4%, no problem. He's like, no, 4% actually enters in areas of issues. And he ran all sort of different things. And I mean, I can look at different charts that show me that, 25 years with 100% stocks, he's running scenarios where 7% of the time you run out of money. At 30 years, 11% of the time, you run out of money. If you go down to 70% stocks, 93, I mean, you just keep going down, and that's at 4%. So what does that mean? Let's continue to put numbers to this. I have $1 million in the account. 4% means I can take out $40,000 a year. By the way, if I'm taking out of a 401k IRA, which if you're listening to this, I hope you're not, right? I mean, but if you're doing that, that's $40,000 before you pay the tax. If you're taking out of just a direct brokerage account, you're going to pay some tax as you go because some of it's long-term capital gains, some of it's short-term. Can you really live off 40K? Can you really live off 25 if it's taxed? Probably not. So then you start having to do multiples. Okay, well, if I really need 10 grand a month to live off of, then that means I need at least 3 million, but that would have to be non-tax. So if it's taxed, I need to have 4.5. So you start trying to figure out that math in your head. And so there's why some people are willing to follow the 4% rule, because they're like, it doesn't matter. I'm running out of money. I'm just going to risk it.
It's just accepted. It's just inevitable at that point. But see,
that's a huge issue, because we've already talked about methods in which you can distribute money in retirement at higher percentage rates than the stock market. And the number one factor is why?
No volatility.
No volatility.
That's right.
When the market loses, it reduces how much money we can pull out.
Okay, we've referenced this before, but let's bring it back. What you're talking about there is sequencing risk. Okay, so how many people, they just retired this year? They get, man, I made my financial independence goal. I'm out of here. I saved up, fill in the blank. What, $1 million, 700,000, whatever the number is that they're trying to hit. They've saved it up. That's their, hey, you can go shove this job money, or I forget what they call it, FU money. Yeah. And then let's say next year, we get the correction we're all expecting in the next however long. And now that money has gone in half.
Yeah, if you start taking income from something that's losing money, it's catastrophic. And that's where these
double whammy.
Yeah, that's where these numbers come from. So when I hear the 4% rule, I'm like, ooh, no, that's not the floor. You shouldn't be using that as the floor. And so it's like, oh, well, should it be 3%? Well, the Evanston study shows it doesn't even come down to 3%, but you start looking at 25 years, 3% sketchy. You go 30 years, maybe it's 2.5%. I don't even see the studies for 50, 60, 70 years.
They don't exist.
Well, I mean, maybe they do flatten out a little bit because maybe over a longer period of time. But here's the problem is when you start taking out money early on and you have losses, you don't have a chance to rebound those. So I don't know how they go much longer. So this 4% rule is a huge problem for me. So when I look at the FIRE movement, I say, one, we've got issues with fixed income because rising inflation through either taxation or actually inflation are going to eat you up. Secondly, this 4% rule, don't bank on it.
All right, one more thing we don't want to forget on this. There's a big discrepancy going on between the way baby boomers spend money out of the market and the way the millennial generation is putting money in. We've talked about this before. The supply and demand of it is it's never going to come together, right?
Yeah, we got 70 million baby boomers that are retiring. right? I mean, literally,
and not only retiring, they're hitting the required minimum distribution age, 70 and a half, where they're having to take money out of the market. Most of them are taking out more than the minimum because they have to. They can't live off of it.
Well, here's the thing is that the market is going to see a significant change over the next 8 to 9 years. And know what's significant about that? The actually number one year of the baby boomer birth rate, the biggest year was 1957. And then the second biggest, 1958, third biggest, 1959, so forth and so on until 62. Why is that important? The baby boomer generation has been shoving their money in the stock market.
Yes.
Why is it significant? Is because the millennial generation has, as a whole, less than 20% of them are putting money in the stock market. And the ones who are, this group, this FIRE movement group, which we're finding, we're going to come back and touch on this in a second, they're shoving money in these index funds. The difference is they're putting money into the market, but only enough. They're not trying to get these 5, 10, 50 million dollar accounts. They're literally trying to get to their 700,000 or 1.2 million accounts so they can live off $1,800 a year. So that's different. So you got just a very small margin of those people actually invested in the stock market. The large majority of them aren't. They don't believe in it. And then you've got this huge group of people, baby boomer generation, that's starting to retire,
selling it off, and
having to retire or take income from these things. So what happens, Joey, when more people are selling something than the people who are buying it? What happens to price?
Yeah, it goes way down.
It has to. That's supply and demand. That's going to happen. Market prices are going to be pushed down in the next 5 to 10 years just by that alone. There's nothing else.
Forget volatility. Yeah. It's not even about like whoever's in the Fed chair or whatever war we're in or whatever.
Basic economics. You can go learn this first year of college, right? I mean, this is so simple. And there's the issue. When we're trusting in Wall Street, we're not trying to educate ourselves. We're not trying to find ways, because that's what I'm hearing in this FIRE movement, and I think it's an issue, is that we're not trying to find ways to be smarter, to be an investor. Like, I don't want to become a professional investor. I'm hearing this group saying, I'm just lazy. I'm lazy with that. I really want to get out of this deal. So I did everything I could to get that. But I just want low cost index mutual funds because that's what everybody at the top's talking about. And then all I want to do is go live life. I just want to enjoy life. And so they're not going out and trying to figure out a way to learn how to be a better business owner so they can start a business. And I'm trying to, I mean, again, I know I'm generalizing, but this is what I'm hearing. There are some. And so if you're one of those, good for you. If you're not, you need to become one of these. Is they're not trying to buy tons and tons of real estate that's going to be income driven. We're not finding ways to create assets that produce income. We're literally being dumb money in the market to buy index mutual funds. And so when all that starts falling apart, not only are you out of job, but you don't really have skills to create income streams outside of having to go to work for somebody again.
That's right. So this is a major issue, and we're going to come up with some solutions to this. Don't worry. But the third thing we need to hit on, this is huge, access to cash. This movement is constantly giving up access to cash.
So if I've heard anything, so here's what I'm hearing with this group, and if you're out there, you're in it. And if I'm wrong, please hit me up. Say I'm wrong.
Comment, please let us know.
Is that, okay, I'm working in my corporate America job, shove every dollar as I can into these 401k plans, and then take advantage of these other IRA deals, and then start doing backdoor Roth IRAs and other things. Do these conversions as time goes on. Now, for most of our listeners, they're like, what? Why would anybody who wants to be free stick their money in an account that has so many different restrictions? It's not even funny. Like, when you try to go read the paperwork on these plans, it's like, yeah, you got to be an attorney to figure it all out.
Well, not to mention, the goal is to retire early. And they're purposely putting money where they shouldn't be able to access it till 59 and a half.
Because they're creating all of these laddered approaches. I mean,
loopholes and backdoors.
Yeah, I started looking into all this stuff. And I mean, again, right today, they got a great little plan. You can actually convert an IRA to a Roth IRA, and you can wait 5 years, and then you can take out the money that's in there without penalty, right? Because you already paid the tax when you converted it. And so they kind of have this laddered approach. Now, here's the problem with all of those things. You don't create the rules. You're playing by someone else's rules, who, by the way, changes the rules constantly.
Have we mentioned this before? You're building your house on someone else's land. Is that?
I think there's probably a podcast on that. Well, but here's the thing, like, when you were a kid, you played a game with somebody that would constantly make up the rules to the game.
Oh yeah.
And they were different every time, and they kept changing the rules. Why?
Somehow it never benefited me.
No, it was a way for them to win. Isn't there an old saying, those who make the rule have the gold, right? The gold rule.
Those who have the gold make the rules.
And now we've given them our gold.
Wow.
So it's just funny to me that when you have this group of people, which I'm just aligned with them in so many ways, like this whole nonconformist, like I don't want to be like everybody else.
Yeah.
I talked to people at this FinCom group who supposedly were on this fire journey
or whatever.
And one of them told me, yeah, like I don't want to conform to what everybody else is thinking of it. We're nonconformists. But then I turned around, I'm like, wait a second. You don't want to be a conformist, but yet you're putting your money in the most typical of places. Like you're doing the most conforming thing I've ever seen. Like you're having to conform to the government's rules within their plan.
And it's amazing when we've asked these questions, you and I, we've seen the mental gymnastics that they're saying, oh, well, this is why we do it that way, because we put the money there, but then we can convert, but then we do the back door, but then we do the ladder, blah, 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 blah. Oh, and then when we actually ask them, so you've already got this financial independence. Yeah. So how much are you being able to take out of your accounts and whatever? Oh, no, I'm just paying cash right now.
I'm just using cash right now.
What?
Because that's the best thing to do is just spend cash. I mean, I think we probably talked about that on the show before too.
Oh my gosh. Okay, let's touch on that. They're also simultaneously, which again, I don't know exactly how they're doing it. They're putting as much as they can towards these qualified plans and things because there's incentives. Okay, let's be fair. They're hearing, oh man, my employer is going to match 25% of this. So it's free money. It's a trap, okay? Stop falling for the trap because it's just going to create more prison bars. But let's talk about what else they're doing. They're using any excess surplus outside of that to pay down debt. What have we said about that before on the show?
Yeah. So I by the way, we love being debt free. We love getting rid of the dumb debt that exists. Consumer debt. Like if you literally have, credit cards and retail store cards and all this junk. I mean, old tax debts, like get rid of that stuff. But here's the thing is that I just can't figure it out for the life of me. And it's just such a contradiction. And it comes from the Dave Ramsey movement. It comes from this movement I'm hearing. And I think it's all that same thread, right?
Yeah.
It's put all our money in index mutual funds because it earns the best and has the lowest rate of return, lowest fees associated with it.
Right.
I'm going to earn 8, 10, 12%. You just name it. I don't care. Whatever. I'll be conservative and say it's 7.5. Which, by the way, we're in 2018 and we've been running a roller coaster and we're even for the year. Take the lows of the market and the lows of the market. I mean, take the low of 18 and the low of what's going to happen, or the high of 2007 to the high now. Like those returns aren't that great.
They're not.
Now, if you take the low of 2008 and run it to the high of 2018, that number looks really good. But I guarantee you didn't buy at the low. I guarantee
exactly.
So that wasn't you. You didn't accept all of that return. But here's the thing. Let's say you did believe that, because they truly believe. They believe they're going to run this 12% show, even though the market proves that from 1900 to 2000 it only earned 5.5%, not 10, not 12, 5.5%. The same market that if it earned 5.5%, the Dow Jones would have to be at over $2 million at 2,100, which we're at 25,000. We're 18 years in. Just let that run by your brain for a second. But if it did, if you truly believe that, and maybe you don't, why in the world would you be paying off your house that's at 3 or 4% and take your tax deduction off of that? Maybe it's 2.5 to 3.5%. Why in the world would you be selling off something that you could be earning 8% on, if you really believe your index mutual funds are going to do that, to pay off 2.5% debt? That contradicts itself.
Well, not to mention, you're putting the money as you're paying down equity in the house in the most illiquid and terrible place to park money, right? I'm not going to be able to get access to that money unless I sell it or I have to borrow against somebody else's terms.
Well, here's the deal, Joey. You're an ex-mortgage guy. They quit their jobs. That's their objective. They're living off $1,800 a month.
Nobody's going to lend it to them.
And they come back
anyway.
to the bank and they say, "Oops, I kind of made a mistake there. I need to refinance this thing."
They're going to say, "Sorry about your luck. We don't make loans to people without jobs."
They're not going to give you the money. It's just not going to happen. So you're going to have to sell your tiny house, and then you're going to put a tiny house and it's going to have 4 wheels on it.
That's right.
I mean, this is silliness that we lock our money up into qualified plans with rules that are not governed by us, that are governed by people who need our money and going to need much, much more of it in the future. So if you don't think they're going to change the rules so they can win the game later, you're fooling yourself. Secondly, we put our money in the most illiquid asset next to that, which is our house. That's at the lowest interest rate when we truly believe we can earn much higher rates of return.
Yeah, it's not logical.
It doesn't. Like, I get I want to get my monthly expenses as low as possible, but yet you're taking a huge sum of money and you're putting it there. So the same opportunity cost you do is say, should I buy a pair of shoes at $100 and give up, that represented a third of my working day. They make that decision, but they don't go, well, I could put the money over here in my quote unquote mutual funds that earn 8%. And then, or I could pay down this house at 2.5%. Like, what? Like, I don't even understand. That contradiction is silly to me that somebody out there isn't going, which one is it, guys? Which one do you believe?
Right.
Let's start there. And well, I'm going to be conservative.
and not to mention, again, and I don't blame them for this. You and I didn't know this kind of stuff 10 years ago, 12 years ago, but they're putting money in savings accounts when it's the lowest possible place we can get any sort of return, and then they're dumping it towards debt. They've lost the opportunity cost on those dollars.
Well, we have such smart people in this deal, and in order to get to where you are, and in order to be able to save 50, 60% of your money, like, you're making some really smart decisions, and it frustrates me that the guidance being given to this group is it's just one person did it, and then they started writing a blog on it, and then they started making $100,000 a month from the blog, and so they're living a completely different lifestyle, but yet they're kind of telling people what they did initially, and so everybody's like, oh, I can be just like that person. No, if they didn't have that blog, I don't think you'd want to be like that person, because their lifestyle would not represent what you want. And good for you if you can leave your job. If your objective is to leave your job so that you can go create another business that you're passionate about, like, yes, like, I'm all over that. But don't make the same mistakes that and put yourself up to these pitfalls that these things are. Because look, I love the fact that, to follow a recipe. I mean, I was at my aunt's house last night, and she had this just spread. Like, my dad's in town, and so I went over to his sister's house, and I hadn't seen her in a while, and they've got this just beautiful spread of food. Like, it is like old school. Love it. I mean, you got squash casserole, you got black beans, you got the
barbecue,
mac and cheese.
You got to have the vegetables.
There's mac and cheese,
Mac and cheese is a vegetable, man.
Yeah, like molasses cookies. Dude, you're slobbering. Get yourself a little towel over there.
I'm glad I wasn't there.
So, and she's like, man, this is good. I was like, man, I'm glad my wife and my oldest daughter got the cooking gene, because I did not. Because I literally yesterday just demolished bacon. I was the bacon guy, and it was like black. It was terrible.
Oh.
And my aunt looks at me and goes, Russ, anybody can make good food as long as they got a recipe. And I'm like, I hear what you're saying there, but I don't know if that's completely true, right? Because I followed the recipe on how to cook that bacon, and I still mess that up. And here's the thing.
There's really a recipe on how to cook bacon?
No, there is. It tells you what temperature, how long to cook it for, turn it after this time. But still, like, you can mess that up. I did. I can prove it to you. My kids would prove it to you. Just look in our trash can for the 15 pieces of bacon that's sitting in there black and thrown away. Well, here's the thing, is that most of the people are out there trying to follow a recipe.
It's simple. It's simplifying the whole thing, right?
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with simplifying. But if you start off with the wrong recipe, it's not going to get you to the end result, right? And so here's the thing. This same movement, they don't like financial advisors. In fact, most of them are using Vanguard funds and this kind of thing because they don't want to fool with them. Typical financial advice is terrible. We agree with you 100%. Just quit doing the typical things, right?
I believe me, I don't believe in typical financial advice. Like when I was with my CFP back in 2006, and I had to go through 2 years of these classes, and I had these professors that were trying to tell me these things, and I'm like, no, that don't make sense. A 15-year mortgage is not better than a 30. Like, no, like let's do the math. Let's look this up. Like you're looking at one part, but you're missing 15 areas. I would argue with them every single day.
I'm shocked by this.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, you know what I had to do when I took the test? I had to answer the question their way. If I want to pass a grade, I had to answer it their way, even though I knew that practically that answer was wrong. So I get it. Don't trust the financial advice that exists out there because, be perfectly honest with you, most of it is BS.
That's right. Well, here's the bottom line, though. We have been teaching a simple way for you almost 10 years now. I've been a client and an advisor now in the same role for almost 10 years. There's hundreds of people that we're helping going towards financial independence, but it's simple and it's a different way to do it. So let's walk through that. There's got to be, let's simplify this for those that are saying, okay, maybe you got a point. I do need to kind of think through this thing and maybe make some adjustments. All right, what do you say?
Well, I'm going to say first, stop locking up your cash, right? You can't put limits on your money. Like qualified plans are not your friend. If you are in a qualified plan, start looking at moving it to a Roth because the tax train is coming and you want to go ahead and pay for that and get the discount on the taxes today. No doubt on that. But stop putting more and more money in there. I would say really, like, look at your house. Like, is paying off your house the best thing you can do with your cash?
Not a chance.
I'm just going to be honest. Like, is it if the option is pay off my house or go buy more junk that I don't need, pay off your house.
Yeah.
But if the option is, okay, I'm going to find assets to produce income, because that's the goal we all should be moving toward, right? That's truly what financial independence is when we have more income coming in that we're not working for that's greater than monthly expenses, then move that way. And if you don't believe that, most of the people that I've talked to in this movement have followed Robert Kiyosaki at some point, some time. And many of them have even played the game cash flow, which if you haven't ever played cash flow, it's like Monopoly on steroids. It is one of the cooler games. It's not cheap.
So well.
But we teach it. I mean, you were teaching it today to a big, huge group of realtors. I was teaching the other day to a big group of dental students. It's a great game. And anybody who's ever played the game cash flow, they realize that the game is to get more passive income than monthly expenses and to get out of their working, he calls it the rat race. And I always ask people, I said, you ever played that game? And like, yeah. I was like, how many times have you ever tried to pay off the mortgage?
Crickets.
Crickets. Never. Because that's not how you win the game. And I'm like, well, if it's true there, why are you trying to do it in real life?
Yeah, just it doesn't connect.
Because they're listening to someone else and they're going, surely that should be the way that I do it then, because they said it was true.
That's how they did it. That's right. So first, stop locking up your cash. Second, you have to work with an IBC practitioner, infinite banking practitioner, to set up an overfunded whole life policy. It doesn't have to be us. You and me, we'll be glad to help you, but you got to work with somebody that can help you start saving in the right place. Quit giving up the opportunity cost on your cash. Quit locking up your cash. It kind of goes along with point one. Give yourself the ability to have access to the funds, to get it out of creditors' hands, to allow it to continue to compound at a much higher interest rate, and also provide some protection for your family. That's just a bonus, right? But you have to work with the right people. IBC practitioners, you can find them anywhere in the country. Just go on the website. But this is a vital step. You have to take.
But here's the thing. If you're listening to this for the very first time, you don't even know what Joey just said. We've got some other podcasts where we talk about the concept of infinite banking. We go into becoming your own banker. We talk about how whole life insurance policies create passive income, how we use life insurance policies in order to buy other assets, how we use those to get rid of consumer debts. So there's so many things that I can't go through today for you to be able to like tell you why these are great tools. But the biggest thing that you need to know, it's a better place for your cash. It's not a substitute to your investment. It is a cash alternative. If you are going to earn 0 to 2% on cash, and this is going to earn 3 to 5% on cash, which one would you do? It's pretty simple. So this is the alternative. So when we talk about getting with somebody who knows this, because you can't just go buy life insurance. Life insurance is a bad place to put money typically. But if you use a overfunded policy and it's structured properly, you got somebody who has studied this. So we always kind of refer to this IBC, infinite banking concept practitioner list that exists out there, that go find that person. Now, we do business with people all over the U.S. So it doesn't matter where you are. If you're like, I'm listening to you guys, I want to do business with you, then reach out to us. We'll set up a time to talk to you. We'll show you how that works.
Yeah, it's freecall.wealthwithoutwallstreet.com if you do want to set up a call with us. So you've probably heard that before, but I just want to kind of reiterate that.
All right, so step 3. So step 1 was stop locking up your cash in qualified plans and paying off things that you're not going to be able to get access to the money in the future. 2, you need to set up an insurance policy that's going to be the mechanism that's going to allow you to buy the assets more efficiently, that's going to give you better return on your cash over time, because you're going to want liquidity, but you don't want it sitting in cash.
No.
Thirdly, that same asset, which we didn't even mention this, we're going to throw out the white paper by that same economist, Wade Fowle, where he showed actually using life insurance inside of your portfolio will increase the amount of income you can take out and have 100% return or 100% probability of not running out. So you actually can get 6, 7, even up to 13% in some scenarios out of that withdrawal rate. So you have $1 million, instead of taking out 40 grand, you can take out 60 grand, 70 grand, or even as high as 130,000. You might want to read that article.
Yeah.
You might want to look into, I guess maybe life insurance may be a little bit better than what I've heard from the same monkeys telling me to, pay off my house, right? So there's some options there. But third thing is literally take that money and start buying assets, and assets that you understand and are passionate about.
Right. We're talking about, we've mentioned these before, but I'll just kind of lay them out. The pillars, the 5 pillars of Wealth Without Wall Street are going to be real estate, businesses, lending, life insurance, and also, of course, cash flow. We talked about taxes and paying off debt. Those are critical to this. So buy the assets that you know or that you can invest the time to understand. Not everybody's not going to be a specialist right out of the gate. So educate yourself. Do this for yourself, but you create the passive income from those assets. That is the true way to financial independence. We've talked about Wade Fowle's article, the Ibbotson chart. We also want to recommend The Power of Zero. You've mentioned the train that's coming on as far as taxes. This is a critical read for anybody that's listening to this.
Yeah, get yourself into a 0% tax bracket as fast as you can. And the only 2 ways that you can do that is having lots of tax-free assets. So if you already have qualified plans like 401ks and IRAs, find ways to go ahead and get the discount today on taxes, because here's a little tidbit. They're going up.
Yeah.
So go ahead and get the discount today. And secondly, the only other bucket is life insurance. So filling up your buckets with those 2 pools of money is going to give you the ability to be in that 0% tax bracket. It's going to actually let you spend more money because you're going to pay less in taxes down the road. Yeah. Joey, if someone does this, somebody follows the advice that we gave today, stop locking up cash, actually start building up assets within life insurance and using those to buy other assets that produce income, what's their life going to be like?
I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, Nelson Nash is the guy that's been doing this the longest. And he was in our office recently, and what does he always talk about? There is nothing like not having to rely on banks, the peace of mind, the stress-free way of life that he's living. You and I aren't there yet, but we're on the road. Guess what? You're not going to have to check the stock ticker if you just decided to leave your job yesterday. You can put that thing away. It gives you a lot more free time to do the things that you were financially independent for?
Yeah, I see that your life is actually you're living in the moment instead of just existing, because there's a part of this fire movement they call the barista fire. And that means like if you need health insurance, and we didn't even touch into that as a problem in this thing. If you need extra money, you go to work at Starbucks. Like I can tell you, no.
I'm
not putting on a beanie on my head anyway. But
that's right.
At the end of the day, like my objective was not to leave a job that I could be super successful in, so I could go work for $12 to $15 an hour in that sort of environment. No, that's dumb.
Right.
So I think that, yeah, freedom is what we're seeking. Let's don't confine ourselves by someone else's idea of what that should look like for you, because I promise you that most of the gurus out there, go look at Dave Ramsey's house. He ain't living in a van down by the river.
No siree.
No chance.
I mean, end of the day, we have talked about a lot of things today. We are behind you 100%. If you are seeking this financial independence, we're 100% behind you. Our question to you is, let's do this in the most optimal way possible. And we want to put some things out to the question. If you don't agree with us, let us know. Put it in the comments. We'll address it on the show. But we can't thank you enough for joining us, and we hope that you'll continue to listen as we unpack this over the future episodes. Have a great day.
This has been the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the show to break free of the Wall Street mindset and begin building wealth on your own terms in places you understand, so that your wealth will never run dry. See you next episode.